Hello, my name is Melissa Treinkman. I'm thrilled to be here today to chat with Michele Pawk. You can read more about her in Volume 80, Issue number 4 of the Vocal Point column in the Journal of Singing. That's the March-April 2024 issue. So Michele, I'm so thrilled to be with you today and get a chance to pick your brain a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to speak with you.
I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your background and what led you to a career in the performing arts.
I grew up in a very rural, small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I started to play the piano and studied from my Uncle Vince. And of course, like every kid, didn't practice. So as soon as my mother would leave the room, my uncle would say, "You didn't practice, did you?" I'd say, "No." He said, "Okay, let's sing." So he would play the piano and then I started to sing with him. My family was very musical. My dad used to sing in a doo-wop group in high school. So that's kind of where it all started. I went to a liberal arts college in Pennsylvania. And like most liberal arts schools, at the end of your sophomore year, you have to declare a major. And so I ran screaming to my dad, who was a dentist, by the way, and said, "Oh my God, Dad, I don't know what I want to do. I have to declare a major." And he said, which was the gift of gifts, right? "What do you love to do more than anything in the world? Because that's what you should do for the rest of your life." And I was like, "Dad, of course I love to, perform more than anything." He was like, "Well, then that's what you should do," which was really, really a gift. And so I auditioned at a couple of more competitive, intense programs and ended up at the University of Cincinnati. And I finished there in the 80s and then sort of just like made my way all through it.
You've had such a great career that includes winning many awards, including a Tony Award. So can you narrow down a couple career highlights, or is that too hard to do?
Um, no, I mean, yes, no, yeah, right. I've been really, really blessed in my career. Sure, I mean, I was prepared and sure, and maybe there was some talent along the way, but I've been really, really lucky. And sometimes I think people forget that there is also a lot of luck involved and the timing of things. Obviously, being in a room with Hal Prince and Carol Burnett and Linda Lavin. That was for Hollywood Arms, which was the play that I received the Tony Award. That was really special for many reasons, but that was special. But I've done a lot of musicals in my career, especially earlier. Crazy for You was an extraordinary experience, so creative, so collaborative, and just really a thrill to be a part of because it was a mega musical and a mega hit. And I feel like you're blessed if you get one of those in a career. And I've been really lucky to have been on that ride for a few of them. Cabaret stands out in my mind, largely because most of the people in that musical hadn't really done a lot of musicals. They all were great singers, but they all, and the director too, right? He came through the lens of acting, right? And that sort of changed to me. Everything else that I did after that, I felt just came through that lens as well. Even now, working on Wicked.
And it seems like your career, would you say it's half and half, straight theater and musical theater? That seems somewhat unique.
I hope it's changing now, but back in the day, you were either one or the other. You either did musicals or you did plays. So I felt really, really lucky to be cast in Hollywood Arms. I think, honestly, I mean, Carol told me this later, that essence wise, I reminded her of her mother, right? And you can't control that. I
And that's
just,
the role that you, for people that don't know, that was the role
right,
that you were playing,
right,
Carol Burnett's
right.
mother, right?
And I didn't know that. I didn't know her anything about her, right? And so that opened many, many more doors for me around just doing straight theater. Somewhere in the middle of my musical career, something happened when I was doing Bounce, the Steve Sondheim, John Weidman musical that Hal Prince was directing. And something started to happen pedagogically. Wasn't really sure what it was, then went to many, many different people trying to figure out, well, what's happening, and some of it, and really don't really know. Nothing was actually physiologically wrong. I did return to my dear teacher, Mary Saunders, who had been with me for years and years. And she said, it sounds like some sort of paralysis, right? And so don't know what it was. And still don't know what it is. But because of it, I took a lot of heavy singing off of my plate. It just was so effortful. I didn't have the joy that I used to have when I was younger doing it, and I couldn't really navigate through it. And so I took it off of my plate, and therefore a lot more plays sort of opened their doors to me. It was a very, very interesting moment in my life and in my career. And I'm sure for everybody out there, right? Singing was just an extension of joy for me. And when you can't do something that you just effortlessly did, right? As a way to express yourself, it did a whole thing on, and I'm sure anybody who's suffered any sort of vocal injury can attest to that. And you know what? It's the thing that nobody talks about. There's so much shame surrounded by vocal whatever, even getting sick and having to call out of a show, right? Nobody talks about it, and you don't get the empathy that you do when you say you roll an ankle and your ankle is huge and you can't perform. People somehow feel like you've done something wrong, when the truth of the matter is you haven't really. You know what I mean? I do think people are starting to talk about it more and more, which I think is really, really, really healthy, because this is so connected to this and connected to this and connected to this. It's just your voice is personal. It's so a part of you. And when you feel like you can't express yourself that way, it's just there's a psychological journey involved with it too. My good friend Vicki Clark, who also teaches, she's talked a lot about where she struggled when she was in the middle of a musical. And so we've talked a little bit about, hormones that and the loss of and what happens to our bodies. And she had literally had to kind of train herself on how to sing.
The things that women have to go through in a course of a singing career compared to, say, your husband, right? Who
Right,
is also a singer and performer, correct?
right, right,
And I mean, yeah, it's just it's
right.
staggering.
Right. And, we can talk about it monthly, right?
Right.
Just the ebbs and flows of the body. And then what happens, you can tell, right? All of a sudden your folds are really fat, or, blah, 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 blah. It's an interesting thing to learn how to navigate. My
And I'm
husband just has gotten better and better and better as time has gone on. Crazy.
You've been in several shows with your husband and currently as well in Wicked. Are you both in Wicked right now?
We both are. We met doing a musical, which is such the cliche, isn't it? Falling in love with your leading guy almost 30 years ago, which is unbelievable for us. For me, it's just joy to go to work with my husband. My husband is one of those company members that you want in a building. He brings a positive energy. He makes sure to go around and see everyone, and I don't know. And on stage, he's just a blast. And these two roles were Cruella de Vil, villains in this thing. He said to me, because we're on the Gershwin Theater in New York City, he said he fantasizes that's where Sweeney Todd started all those years ago, and he saw it. I mean, for him, that musical, changed his life. And he said, sometimes when we're at the end and we're doing that scene, I fantasize that we're Sweeney and Mrs. Lovett. I was like, okay, that works.
I love that. Well, maybe that's your next collaboration. Who knows?
Right? Maybe in
Yeah.
Poughkeepsie somewhere.
Okay. Do you have any other mentors that shaped your development, would you say?
I studied with Mary for years. I was so grateful to her on so many levels. Yes, I mean, Joan Lader, who's a pathologist and incredible voice teacher here in the city, was also instrumental trying to navigate through whatever I was dealing with. I've worked with some really incredible musical directors along the way, and directors. I steal from everybody I can possibly steal from. Well, because, right? This is a craft, what we do.
Yes.
It's a craft. And that's why in some ways I've really enjoyed and been privileged to teach, because some stuff that I've learned you can't learn in a book. Most stuff I've learned you can't learn in a book. You can read about it and you can intellectualize it, but you can't really put it into practice until you're actually doing it. So it's been an honor to
Fascinating.
teach.
You seem like you have that heart of a teacher who wants to educate and help people develop and grow. That's
Thank you. You know what I found? The teaching coincided along with the vocal issues that I was having and my son, and there was a lot. It all just kind of happened at the same time, which was very, very interesting and a gift in a way. I found that when I am able to affect change in a student in some way, and I'm sure you feel the same way, right? It's just as rewarding for me as being on stage and having a moment and doing something. I feel so rewarded by that, right? It fuels me in a way, creatively and passionately, in a very similar way that being on stage does. And I don't know that I knew that going into teaching. And I don't know that that's true for everyone, but it certainly was for me. And that's, I feel lucky. When I first started teaching, I reached out to some of my fancy friends who are, super successful in the industry and, directing and choreographing shows of their own now. And I said, what is it? When you have young kids come in, tell me what I can help, groom along the way. And consistently, the word was kids coming out of college now, and this was also 10 years ago, right? Don't understand style. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I think young students today coming out, of course, which makes sense, right? They want to do everything in a contemporary style. And so getting them to understand that, oh, not everything is contemporary. Do you know what I mean? And how, and that's really, I think, valuable for them along the way, and also valuable to have a long career.
Is there something you wish you could tell your younger self as you were getting ready to start this, what's turned out to be a very big career?
I wish I'd known in the way that I know it now, is that this business is full of peaks and valleys, right? And sometimes you really sit down here and you wonder, oh my gosh, am I ever going to come back up, right? As the highs are high, but the lows are low. You can audition for 50 jobs before you get one. It's hard to learn how to take care of yourself when it's down here. That's something that I has been really thrilling to sort of acknowledge in the way I think the industry is changing a little bit, is the conversation around wellness and what that means. I think knowing what those things are for you that lift you in a way. Like for me, it's always been a little bit about nature, right? I know if I'm feeling blue and I'm like, I got to go to the woods. I have to take a hike, and and I can have a good cry up in the path, and I will come to things like, oh, that's what that's about. I guess I always thought that, oh, you do one job and then you make a certain amount of money, and then the next job you'll get easier and you'll make and more money, and then you'll just keep building on this ladder. And in some ways, this business is the antithesis of that. It feels like you start over every job. And that's not to say that you don't have a reputation behind you, but I had a great master class out at Wagner College, where I teach. Rob DeCina, who's the head of casting over at CBS, came and Zoom talked to my graduating seniors. And I'll tell you something he said, which I thought was really, really valuable and interesting. He said to young actors, don't focus on the job. Right now, as you're starting out, don't worry about getting the job. You can't control the job. He said, that's the mistake I see a lot of young actors doing, is that they're pinning everything on whether I got it or not. And so then your success, your self-worth, plummets, of course, when you don't get it. When, as he said, 9 times out of 10, you don't know why you got it or didn't get it. It doesn't really matter. And he just kept talking about preparedness. And I thought, because that's the thing you can control, how prepared you are when you walk in the room. And then if I think that's amazing. And I'm like, they weren't really right for this, but man, the work is great. I'm going to call them back. I'm going to call them back. I'm going to call them back. And one day, that casting person is going to be able to say to you, oh, I couldn't wait to cast you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, super inspiring. And I think that there's also an element, just talking to you, I can tell that people love you and probably love working with you. So, can you say anything about just the kind of person that people, building those relationships and that element?
Wow. It's super simple. And I say it to my seniors all the time, right? Be the person they want in the room. You don't have to be the best. I mean, who knows what that is anyway, right? You want to be the person they want to have in a room. And when you're working on a new piece, especially, it's stressful. It's stressful. You got new pages coming every day. You're working on something in the afternoon, and then you're performing something different at night. And that's coming, and that's coming, and that's coming, right? So the people at the top of the food chain up here, who are the ones that hire you, right? Yes, your essence qualities are gonna have to be the thing that get you hired in conjunction with your preparedness, right? But be the good egg. Don't be that person, right? Don't be that person who says, my character wouldn't do that. Or, but don't do that. Just be the person who shows up and said, I don't know, maybe I'll try. I don't, yes, okay. You know what I mean? And then try. More often than not, I mean, yes, I have some talent. Yes, I've had a lot of luck, as I've said, but I think I'm also just a nice person. I think people are like, oh, she's easy. Hire her. She's not going to
Yes.
be a headache.
And like you said, put a lot of work into what you do. So,
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? Is when you're not, when you're down here at the low part, how do you motivate, right? How do you find something creative in your life to do that still makes you feel worthy, like an actor, like a dancer, like a singer? And some of that is, and it's difficult, right? Because sometimes you don't have money. My first go-to is get yourself in class, right? Get yourself in a voice lesson. Even if it's once a month and you record it and you do it every day, do it.
yes.
Do that thing. Get yourself in a dance class if you can. But there are free things you can do too, right?
Mhm.
Have some friends over to your house and make a vat of pasta and say, hey, let's read a play we've never read, right? Or let's, whatever. Let's create something new, because it's hard. It's hard in this business when nobody is validating you to
Right.
have a lot of worth, to feel like you have something to give. And that's something to give, you knowing it is the thing that you have to bring into the room.
Mm,
And that's hard if you are feeling like nobody wants me, nobody, oh my goodness, you know what I mean? So
right.
hanging on to that, you got to hang on to that.
Yes, and continuing to work, 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 build your craft when there's nothing coming up on your plate. I think as a voice teacher, we all get those calls like, I'm sorry, I haven't taken a lesson in several months, but I have an audition in a week. In your head, you're just like, why weren't you
Why?
preparing this whole time? Because so
Right.
that's frustrating.
And you just said it, right? That's part of being prepared. That's part of the preparation. So if you're a person who's going to go in for musical theater, yeah, you need to be singing every day. You need to do it. You need to, if you can't get in a dance class, there's plenty of things online, right? That your skill set has to be available and ready to go. And that's part of what being prepared is. You're
Yes.
right, not waiting, not learning a song 2 nights before your audition.
Do you have any hopes and dreams for your future at this point in your career?
I would love to continue to work with my husband. I love that. It doesn't really matter where to me. I'm just so grateful.
Yes.
Grateful.
hmm And I'm sure that's a big part of your success.
Maybe. Thanks for that. My mom died when I was in my early mid 30s, right? And she was young. And it was such a valuable lesson in a way that I got. Oh, life is short. Life is short. So the stuff that's like consuming my time and energy and taking me away from whatever that is, I was like, I don't have time for that anymore. I don't have time. And in a way, that was the gift, to take away from something that was, was terribly sad. So yes, that's made me more grateful
Yeah,
for the small stuff along the way.
beautiful. Well, thank
Yeah,
you again, Michelle. I really
pleasure,
enjoyed
my
talking to you.
pleasure.